It begins with Elena Ramirez sitting at her kitchen table in Fresno, California, the same house she once shared with her husband, Detective Noah Ramirez. Her face is drawn, eyes rimmed red, the weight of 7 long years pressing down as she whispers, "He went to work and never came back." Noah wasn't just any detective. In Fresno, he was a hero. Known for cracking down on drug rings and human trafficking cases, he was respected, even celebrated. His photograph still hangs in the local police precinct, smiling in uniform, unaware of the storm that was about to come. But on that warm spring morning 7 years ago, something changed forever. CCTV cameras captured the last known images of Noah Ramirez. He kissed Elena on the cheek, told his daughter he'd be home in time for dinner, and walked out the door. A routine shift, just like any other. The footage shows him stepping into his car, driving off down their quiet suburban street. That was the last anyone ever saw of him. At first, no one panicked. Noah was a detective. Sometimes he'd disappear for hours, even days, while working undercover or following leads. But when he didn't call, when his phone went straight to voicemail, Elena's unease turned into dread. The police opened an investigation, but weeks passed with no progress. Noah's car was eventually found, abandoned on a remote road near Yosemite National Park. No fingerprints, no signs of struggle. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. The media picked up the story. California detective missing, foul play suspected. Rumors swirled. Was it cartel retaliation? Did he stumble onto something bigger than he could handle? Or worse, did he run? Elena couldn't accept that. Noah would never leave us, she insists, her voice cracking. He was scared before he left. I could feel it, but he promised he'd come back. Then, months after his disappearance, an anonymous tip shattered the silence. A letter slipped under Elena's door at midnight. No signature, just 9 chilling words. Stop asking questions. He's not missing. He's hiding. The voiceover cuts in. One of California's top detectives vanished without a trace. No goodbye, no body. But the truth would shake the state. Suddenly, the case wasn't just about a missing man. It was about secrets Noah had uncovered, secrets powerful enough to make him disappear. And as the letters kept coming and whispers of corruption started to surface, one thing became clear. Detective Noah Ramirez's story was far from over. Detective Noah Ramirez wasn't just a name in Fresno. He was a symbol. A man who had risen from the gritty streets of Central California to become one of the state's most decorated detectives. Known for his relentless pursuit of justice, Noah had made headlines in 2015 after dismantling the infamous Delgado Cartel, a ruthless syndicate responsible for trafficking children and drugs up and down the state. The community celebrated him like a hero. Newspaper articles called him the man who cleaned up Fresno. Parents felt safer. Kids could play in the parks again. His face was familiar, smiling from award ceremonies, shaking hands with the mayor, even gracing local billboards for public safety campaigns. But beneath the medals and press conferences was a family man. Home videos show Noah beaming at his daughter Sophia's 6th birthday, just 1 week before he vanished. In the clip, he's lifting her up to blow out candles, laughter echoing through the backyard. That was the last birthday she'd have with her father present. Elena, his wife, recalls those final days with painful clarity. He was different. He barely slept. He kept checking the windows, locking doors twice. I asked him what was wrong, and he just kissed me and said, "Nothing you need to worry about." But I could feel it, he was scared. Noah had faced danger before. Threats were nothing new. After the Delgado takedown, there were whispers of bounties on his head. Cartel remnants still operated in shadows, and revenge was always a possibility. But it wasn't until a close friend and former partner, Detective Marcos Rivera, came forward that a darker truth surfaced. Rivera shares, voice low and cautious. Noah told me, "If something happens to me, tell them I didn't run. Tell my family I was trying to protect them." Rivera says Noah had found something big, something that reached beyond street gangs and drug dealers. He wouldn't say exactly what, but his fear was palpable. Rivera recalls their last meeting in a diner outside Fresno. Noah looked over his shoulder the entire time, his hands trembling slightly as he sipped coffee. "He made me promise," said there were people inside the department he couldn't trust, that if he disappeared, it wouldn't be because he wanted to. The statement cast a chilling shadow over the entire investigation. Because for months, the official line was that Noah had cracked under pressure, possibly fled, maybe even staged his own disappearance. But now, with his last words echoing, the narrative began to fracture. The hero detective hadn't run. He'd been hunted. And somewhere out there, the real reason for his vanishing remained buried, waiting to be unearthed. The night Detective Noah Ramirez disappeared has become the stuff of legend in Fresno. It was June 18, 2016, a warm Saturday night like any other. But for Noah's family, it would mark the beginning of an agonizing, endless nightmare. According to the timeline pieced together by investigators, Noah had spent the day at home. His wife, Elena, remembers him seeming distracted, barely touching his dinner. Their daughter, Sophia, had fallen asleep on the couch, and Noah gently carried her to bed. It seemed like a peaceful evening. But then, at around 11:47 p.m., everything changed. Noah received a call, one that would pull him away from home forever. Elena recalls hearing his phone vibrate on the kitchen counter. He checked the screen, his face going pale. Without a word, he grabbed his keys and his badge. Elena asked where he was going, and all he said was, "It's work. I won't be long." Those would be his last words to her. He left in his black, unmarked department-issued sedan, a standard vehicle used by detectives in Fresno County. The street cameras caught him driving west, heading toward Highway 41, the road that leads up toward the Sierra Nevada mountains and, eventually, Yosemite National Park. After that, he vanished. Hours turned into days, and when Noah didn't return, panic gripped the Ramirez household. Elena filed a missing person report, but early responses from the department were disturbingly casual. Some colleagues suggested that maybe Noah had reached his breaking point. The pressures, the threats, maybe he just needed to disappear for a while. But then, 5 days later, a chilling discovery shattered that theory. Noah's car was found abandoned deep in the woods near Yosemite National Park, nearly 80 miles from Fresno. The vehicle was parked on a remote service road, miles from the main tourist routes. There were no fingerprints, no blood, no sign of a struggle. In fact, the car was wiped so clean it raised immediate red flags. More alarming was the dashcam. Like most department vehicles, Noah's sedan was equipped with a dashboard camera designed to record his movements. But when forensic teams retrieved the memory device, they found the footage had been erased, deliberately and professionally. The data log showed that recording stopped precisely at 12:38 a.m., less than an hour after Noah left home. What happened between Fresno city limits and those desolate mountain roads remains a haunting blank spot in the investigation. But there was one detail investigators couldn't ignore. Noah's phone pinged a final signal at 12:41 a.m. near a gas station in Oakhurst, a small town at the foothills of the Sierra. After that, nothing. It was as if he had simply vanished into thin air. Elena, desperate for answers, would later drive that route herself. I kept thinking maybe I'd see something they missed. A sign. Anything. But the roads were empty, the trees silent. All she found was a growing sense of dread that her husband had been lured out that night, not for a case, but for an ambush. The twist that sent shockwaves through the department came when an independent tech expert, hired by Elena, examined the dashcam's wiped storage. He confirmed that the deletion wasn't random. It was done using specialized software, the kind typically used by law enforcement and intelligence agencies. This revelation cracked the case wide open. If Noah's disappearance was a personal breakdown, why was there evidence pointing to an organized, professional cover-up? Who had the skills and the motive to make a decorated detective vanish without a trace? As the weeks turned into months, Detective Noah Ramirez's disappearance began to fade from the headlines, but not for everyone. Investigative reporter Mia Chun from a small but scrappy outlet in Sacramento wasn't ready to let go. She had covered Ramirez years earlier during his celebrated takedown of the Delgado Cartel, one of California's most dangerous trafficking networks. Something about his vanishing didn't sit right with her. Mia started digging, and what she found would send ripples far beyond Fresno. Through off-the-record interviews with former informants and an old DEA contact, Mia uncovered whispers that the Delgado Cartel wasn't finished, not by a long shot. While the headlines boasted that Noah's 2015 operation dismantled the cartel's stronghold in California, in reality, a second, hidden arm of the operation had quietly grown stronger. This shadow network had shifted focus from drug running to human trafficking and money laundering. And worse, it had tentacles deep inside law enforcement. Her investigation led to a shocking discovery. Several officers inside Noah's own department were suspected of being on the cartel's payroll. Secret bank transfers, offshore accounts, unexplained assets. The signs were all there, but no official probe had ever been launched. Why? Because every time someone got too close, they were either reassigned or silenced. Mia's report brought back chilling memories for Elena Ramirez. She agreed to speak publicly for the first time since her husband disappeared. Through tears, she recalled the final weeks before Noah vanished. He had grown increasingly paranoid, sleeping with a loaded pistol under his pillow, double-checking the locks at all hours, and jumping at every unknown car that passed their street. He kept saying, "It's not over, Elena. I thought I ended it, but it's not over," she whispered. Elena had begged him to take a leave of absence, to protect their family. But Noah refused. "If I stop now, more people will die," he told her. The emotional weight of Elena's testimony stirred public outrage, but it was what came next that blew the case wide open. An anonymous FBI agent, risking their career, leaked a classified detail to Mia Chun. Just weeks before his disappearance, Noah Ramirez had secretly sent a package of files directly to the FBI's Sacramento field office. Encrypted and marked eyes only, these files allegedly contained evidence that not only linked the Delgado cartel's resurgence, but also implicated powerful people in California law enforcement and politics. Bank statements, surveillance logs, intercepted phone calls. Noah had been quietly building a case bigger than anyone had realized. And those files named names. The FBI source confirmed that after receiving Noah's evidence, an internal debate raged inside the bureau. Some wanted to move immediately, others feared political fallout. In the middle of this bureaucratic paralysis, Noah disappeared. For the first time, a dark possibility began to emerge. Detective Ramirez hadn't simply vanished because he got too close. He had been removed because he threatened to expose a network that reached far beyond the cartels, into the very institutions meant to protect the public. Just when it seemed like the case had settled into a grim acceptance, that Detective Noah Ramirez had been silenced by the powerful enemies he made, a new theory began to circulate, igniting fresh controversy and division. It started with a leaked financial document obtained by reporter Mia Chun. It showed several large cash withdrawals from a bank account belonging to Noah Ramirez in Arizona. The dates? Months after he was declared missing. The amounts were significant, just under federal reporting limits, and spaced out in a way that suggested someone was carefully avoiding detection. Suddenly, whispers spread like wildfire. Had Noah faked his own death? According to this new theory, Noah, after realizing just how deep the cartel's reach went, even into his own department, might have staged his disappearance to escape. Some claimed he entered the witness protection program under a secret deal with federal authorities, trading his explosive files for safety and a new identity. Online forums lit up with speculation. News anchors debated the possibility every night. Was Noah a hero forced into hiding? Or was there a darker truth, that he had abandoned his badge, his duty, and worst of all, his family? For Elena Ramirez, the theory was like reopening a wound that had barely begun to scar. The idea that her husband, the man who had tucked their daughter into bed every night and sworn he'd never leave, had simply walked away was unbearable. In a rare interview, her voice cracked as she spoke. Noah would never abandon us. Never. If he's alive out there, something's keeping him from coming home. The public could feel her pain, torn between clinging to hope and confronting betrayal. Yet, the evidence kept mounting. The next bombshell came when a truck stop surveillance image surfaced from Flagstaff, Arizona. The blurry photo, dated nearly a year after Noah's disappearance, showed a man at a gas station, tall, broad-shouldered, with the same sharp jawline and dark features that matched Ramirez's known appearance. He wore a cap pulled low, but investigators couldn't ignore the resemblance. The man paid in cash and drove away before he could be identified. Suddenly, theories spiraled further. If Noah was alive, why hadn't he contacted his family? Why take money from his own account, knowing it would eventually raise flags? Some speculated he was being coerced. Others darkly suggested he had gone rogue, perhaps even working with the very cartels he once fought. Fueling the fire, A retired detective who had worked with Noah claimed off-record that Ramirez once told him, "If I ever disappear, assume it was my choice, but not for the reasons they'll tell you." This cryptic statement only deepened the mystery. Was Noah hinting at a larger conspiracy that forced him into exile? Or was he subtly confessing to a plan long in the making? The surveillance photo from Flagstaff was all Elena Ramirez needed. For the first time in 7 years, she had something solid, something that hinted her husband might still be alive. Against warnings from local authorities, and with the backing of investigative reporter Mia Chun, Elena packed a suitcase and flew to Arizona. She wasn't going as a grieving widow. She was going as a woman on a mission to uncover the truth. When they arrived in Flagstaff, the small desert city felt like a ghost town. Every gas station, every roadside diner became a potential lead. Mia, experienced in field work, tracked down the truck stop owner who reluctantly confirmed that federal agents had already questioned him about the guy in the cap months earlier. But no official report ever surfaced. As they dug deeper, Mia and Elena stumbled on records connecting the Delgado cartel's financial operations in Arizona with suspicious campaign donations to high-ranking politicians back in California. These weren't small-time officials. These were police chiefs, district attorneys, and even a state senator who had received laundered money. The same people Noah Ramirez had quietly begun investigating before his disappearance. The pieces were clicking into place now. Noah's last case wasn't just about taking down a cartel. It was about exposing a pipeline of corruption stretching from the California Central Valley to the deserts of Arizona. Elena, however, wasn't ready for the emotional gut punch waiting for her. In a rundown part of Flagstaff, she spotted a wall covered in graffiti. Among the tags and fading paint was a single phrase, sprayed in black: "Justice for Ramirez." Her knees buckled as she stared at it, tears streaming down her face. Someone out here, perhaps an ally, perhaps a victim, still believed in Noah's cause. It was the first sign that her husband wasn't entirely forgotten in this barren land. Mia, ever the reporter, documented everything but kept one eye on their surroundings. The closer they got to the truth, the more dangerous it became. Their break came when a motel clerk at a roadside establishment, half drunk and eager for a bribe, admitted he'd seen a man matching Noah's description staying there, under a different name. He even remembered the man leaving suddenly one night after a black SUV pulled into the lot and parked without turning off its engine. That was years ago, but the room hadn't been cleaned properly since. Mia and Elena convinced the motel owner to let them into the old room, room 14, at the far end of the lot. Inside, the walls were stained, and the air reeked of mildew. But tucked behind a loose ceiling tile, they found a stash of discarded papers, fast food receipts, a torn map of Arizona marked with red circles, and most importantly, a fake Arizona driver's license. The face staring back from the ID was unmistakable. It was Noah Ramirez. But the name was different, David Santos. Elena's hands trembled as she clutched the ID to her chest, her heart a storm of emotions: relief, betrayal, and rising fear. Her husband hadn't died. He had been living a shadow life. And now, with this proof in their hands, the danger wasn't just theoretical anymore. They had stepped into the crosshairs of the very people who wanted Noah's story buried forever. The motel discovery should have brought Elena closer to her husband. But instead, it unraveled everything. As reporter Mia Chun cross-referenced the fake ID's activity, a darker pattern emerged. The ID had been used, not just for low-profile living, but for moving large sums of money through wire transfers, flagged as cartel transactions. It wasn't Noah Ramirez hiding. It was someone using his face. The theory of Noah faking his death collapsed like a house of cards. And the new suspect came into sharp focus: Detective Luis Ortega, Noah's former partner back in Fresno. The man who had tearfully spoken at Noah's memorial. The man who had consoled Elena, promising her they'd get answers. Mia dug into Ortega's finances, and what she found was damning. A sudden spike in his assets over the past 7 years. New properties, offshore accounts, and links to businesses tied to cartel shell corporations. He wasn't just dirty, he was swimming in blood money. The sting was set. Working with federal agents quietly tracking cartel movements in Arizona, Mia and Elena watched from a distance as Ortega was lured into a meeting under the pretense of another payout. Hidden cameras rolled as the walls closed in. Pressed against the mounting evidence, Ortega's mask cracked. Under the weight of his own guilt and the flashing red recording light, he finally confessed. Noah was going to blow it all up. The cartel, the dirty cops, the politicians. He had files, everything. He told me he was going to the feds. I had no choice. I warned him, but he wouldn't listen. His voice trembled as he admitted what no one wanted to hear. I set him up. I gave them his route. I thought they'd scare him. Not this. Elena's heart shattered. The man she had welcomed into her home, fed at her table, had handed her husband over to his killers. The betrayal wasn't from a stranger. It was from someone Noah trusted with his life. But the final blow came just hours later. Acting on Ortega's confession, police scoured a stretch of barren desert outside Phoenix, a known dumping ground for cartel executions. Under the scorching sun, cadaver dogs hit on a shallow grave. Inside were human remains, too degraded to identify by sight. But the DNA tests came back fast, as if the universe was eager to crush the last shred of hope. The remains were a match. Noah Ramirez. 7 years of mystery ended not with a reunion, but with a grave in the desert. Elena collapsed upon hearing the news, her sobs echoing in the sterile walls of the police station. Mia stood beside her, tears silently tracking down her cheeks. Justice was closing in, but at a price no family should bear. The confession by Detective Luis Ortega ignited a firestorm that swept across California like a long-overdue reckoning. News outlets ran breaking headlines. Detective Ramirez betrayed by own partner. Cartel ties exposed. FBI, Interpol dismantled cross-border cartel network in massive raid. Within days, the dominoes began to fall. Interpol agents, alongside U.S. federal authorities, launched coordinated raids across California and Arizona. Police chiefs, city officials, and even state-level politicians, men and women once seen shaking hands at public events, were led away in handcuffs, their faces pale and tight-lipped as the cameras flashed. Among them, the Fresno police commissioner who had publicly mourned Noah Ramirez and called him a fallen hero. Behind closed doors, he had signed off on cartel shipments, protected their routes, and silenced whistleblowers. The Delgado cartel's second operation, the one Noah had uncovered before his death, crumbled as its leaders were arrested in simultaneous sweeps in Mexico, and the U.S. warehouse doors were blasted open, revealing stockpiles of weapons, drugs, and laundered cash. At home in Fresno, national outrage boiled over. Protesters gathered outside City Hall and police headquarters, holding signs that read, "Justice for Noah. In the corruption. Heroes don't die in silence." But the most painful chapter was yet to be written, laying Detective Noah Ramirez to rest. Under a golden California sky, Elena stood by a fresh grave, her hand trembling as she placed a folded flag on the simple headstone. It read, Detective Noah Ramirez, 1980 to 2015. Beloved husband, father, and servant of justice. The funeral was attended by hundreds, family, friends, strangers who had followed the case for years. The same streets where people had once whispered rumors about Noah going rogue, now echoed with solemn respect. Elena, her voice raw but steady, vowed in front of the crowd. My husband gave his life to expose evil. I will spend mine making sure it never takes root again. His sacrifice will not be in vain. The camera panned to Mia Chun, the reporter who had risked everything to help Elena bring the truth to light. She nodded quietly, already planning the next investigation to keep the pressure on corrupt officials. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the cemetery, a voiceover brought the story full circle. Detective Noah Ramirez vanished without a trace. But even in death, his courage dismantled a criminal empire. Justice, though delayed, was delivered, and his legacy will live on in every corner where corruption once thrived. The final scene lingered on Elena and her daughter, standing side by side, broken but unbowed, as the world finally recognized the man who had fought and fallen for the truth. Justice had been served. Evil had been exposed. And Noah Ramirez's name was no longer a question mark in a cold case file. It was a rallying cry for justice.